Janet, a black CEO, was walking down the aisle toward her seat when she saw her. A white woman in a designer suit, sitting in seat 1A. Her seat? She had her laptop open, her Louis Vuitton purse in the window compartment, completely settled in like she owned the place. "Excuse me," Janet said politely. "I think you're in my seat." She didn't even look up from her screen. "No, I'm not." Janet checked her boarding pass again. Seat 1A. Window. First class. "Ma'am, this is seat 1A. That's what my boarding pass says." Now she looked up. Her eyes scanned her from head to toe, and her expression said everything. "Well, there's obviously been some mistake with your upgrade." "My upgrade?" Janet kept her voice calm. "Ma'am, I'm not upgraded. This is my assigned seat." She turned back to her laptop. "Look, I don't know what diversity program got you up here, but I'm a corporate attorney. I fly this route twice a month. I specifically requested this seat, and I'm not moving." The passenger across the aisle stopped scrolling his phone. The woman in 2C put down her magazine. Everyone was suddenly very interested in this conversation. "Could you please check your boarding pass?" Janet asked. "I don't need to check anything," she snapped. "I know where I belong." That last sentence hung in the air like smoke. Before you see how this plays out, smash that subscribe button because this story is about to get absolutely insane. If you believe everyone should be respected, type respect in the comments. Only those that don't respect others won't subscribe and comment. Janet remained standing in the aisle. "Ma'am, I paid for this seat. I have a valid boarding pass. I'm going to need you to move." She finally turned to face her fully. "And I'm telling you, that's not happening. You can take this up with the gate agent, you can call corporate, you can throw whatever tantrum you want. But I'm not giving up my seat to someone who clearly doesn't understand how first class works." Other passengers were pulling out their phones now. Recording. The tension was thick enough to cut. "I understand exactly how first class works," Janet said quietly. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone made a very expensive mistake putting you up here." The flight attendant, Joan, hurried over. "Is everything okay here?" "No, everything is not okay," the woman said before Janet could speak. "This woman is claiming my seat, and I need her removed immediately." Joan looked between them. "Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass?" Janet handed it over. Joan examined it, then looked at the woman. "Ma'am, could I see yours as well?" "Absolutely." She handed over her pass with a smug expression. Joan's face went confused. "Ma'am, your boarding pass shows seat 1B. This lady has 1A. "That's impossible. I specifically requested the window seat." "Check your system." Joan pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. After a moment, she looked up. "Ma'am, you're assigned to 1B. The aisle seat." "Ms. Jade," Janet said quietly. "Miss Jade has the window seat. It's been assigned to her for quite some time." The woman's voice got louder. "I don't care what your little computer says. I am not sitting in the aisle. I am not sitting next to her. And I am certainly not moving from this seat." She crossed her arms and stared straight ahead, like a child throwing a tantrum. To understand what happened next, you need to know who Janet Jade really is. At 34, Janet had traveled a long way from the Detroit projects where she grew up. Her mother, Sandra, cleaned office buildings downtown, working double shifts so Janet could have books, so she could dream bigger than the crumbling apartment complex they called home. While other kids played in the hallways, Janet studied. While they hung on street corners, she was at the library. Her mother would find her asleep over textbooks at the kitchen table, and she'd cover her with a blanket without waking her up. That dedication earned her something nobody in her neighborhood thought was possible: a full scholarship to MIT. Aerospace engineering. 4 years later, she graduated summa cum laude. But success never changed Janet's core values. She still believed in quiet dignity. Still believed you earned respect through merit, not volume. She'd never raised her voice in anger, not once in her adult life. When people asked what she did for work, she'd just say, "I work in aviation." Nothing more, nothing flashy. She let her work speak for itself. The woman refusing to move from her seat was Kate Mitchell. 42 years old, senior partner at Morrison & Associates law firm, corporate litigation specialist. She was used to conference rooms where her voice commanded attention, where junior lawyers scrambled when she entered. Kate had built her entire career on being the person who got what she wanted, when she wanted it. And right now, she wanted that window seat. As she stared at her laptop screen, her mind had already categorized Janet. Probably some middle manager who got lucky with a company upgrade. Maybe someone's assistant. Definitely not someone who belonged in her world. The phones kept recording. The woman in 2C was openly shaking her head in disgust. The businessman in 3A had completely stopped working to watch this unfold. "Ma'am," Joan said carefully, "I really need you to move to your assigned seat so we can begin boarding other passengers." "I'm not moving," Kate said without looking up. "This lady can take 1B, or she can find another seat. But I'm staying right here." Janet stood patiently in the aisle. She could have made a scene, could have demanded she move immediately. Instead, she simply said, "Could you please call a gate agent?" Kate scoffed. "A gate agent isn't going to change anything, sweetheart. This is about passenger rights and corporate policy." Joan looked apologetic. "Ma'am, let me get my supervisor." 10 minutes later, Victor Martinez, the gate supervisor, boarded the plane. The moment he stepped into first class and saw Janet standing in the aisle, his entire demeanor changed. "Miss Jade? I didn't realize you were on this flight. I'm so sorry about the delay." Kate's typing stopped. The gate agent knew Janet by name. Victor turned to Kate with a professional but noticeably cooler smile. "Ma'am, I understand there's been some confusion about seating." "There's no confusion," Kate said, her confidence wavering slightly. "I'm in my seat. This woman has the wrong boarding pass." Victor examined both boarding passes. His face went pale when he looked at Janet's. "Ma'am, this is a permanent seat assignment. Miss Jade's boarding pass is, well, it's not a standard passenger pass." "What do you mean, not standard?" Victor looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I can offer you an upgrade to first class on our next available flight, or I can find you another first class seat if one becomes available." "I don't want another flight. I don't want another seat." Kate's voice was getting shrill. "I want this seat, and I'm not moving until someone with real authority tells me to." Janet finally spoke. "Ma'am, you're going to need to move." But Kate had dug in. She turned to face the other passengers. "Is everyone seeing this? Is everyone recording this discrimination? Because I'm about to call corporate headquarters and file a lawsuit against this airline for harassment." She pulled out her phone and started dialing, her fingers stabbing at the screen. The entire first-class cabin waited to see what would happen when corporate answered that call. While Kate waited on hold, she decided to do some research. Her fingers flew across her phone screen, typing the airline's name plus corporate structure into Google. She was going to find out exactly who this Janet person worked for, and then she was going to get her fired. What would you do to Kate if you were in Janet's shoes? Would you forgive her, or make sure she pays for what she did to you? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit the subscribe button for more stories like this. After scrolling for a few minutes, she found the airline's executive page. Her eyes scanned the names and titles until she found it. Janet Jade, Regional Operations Director. Kate smiled with satisfaction. Regional Operations Director. Middle management at best. She was a senior partner at a major law firm. She definitely outranked some regional paper pusher. Janet had calmly taken the aisle seat and pulled out a book. She could see Kate researching on her phone, could hear her muttering to herself, but she didn't react. She simply opened to her bookmark and started reading. The other passengers weren't as patient. The woman in 2C was sighing loudly every few minutes. The businessman in 3A kept checking his watch. Someone in the back called out, "Can we please just take off?" Kate finally got through to corporate. "Yes, I need to speak to someone in executive management immediately. I'm being discriminated against on flight 447. She started pacing, as much as the narrow aisle allowed. "What do you mean you need more details? I'm a corporate attorney. I've been flying with you for 8 years, and one of your middle managers thinks she can steal my seat." Janet turned a page in her book. But then Captain Sam Larry emerged from the cockpit and walked straight into first class. When he saw Janet, his face lit up. "Miss Jade, what a surprise. I had no idea you were on my flight today." Janet looked up and smiled for the first time since this whole situation started. "Captain Larry, always good to see you." How are the expansion plans coming? I heard we might be adding those Seattle routes ahead of schedule. Kate stopped pacing, her phone call forgotten. She stared as the captain talked to Janet like they were old colleagues. The board approved it last month, Janet replied. Should be operational by next quarter. Captain Larry nodded enthusiastically. And the new aircraft acquisitions? The pilots' union has been asking about the timeline. Contracts should be finalized this week. Kate hung up her corporate call without saying goodbye. The captain was talking to Janet about board approvals, about expansion plans. Regional operations directors didn't make those kinds of decisions. She cleared her throat loudly. Excuse me, Captain, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. This lady and I were just working out a small seating issue. Janet looked at her with polite but distant eyes. No misunderstanding on my part, ma'am. You were quite clear about your position. Captain Larry sensed the tension. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Kate said quickly. Just a mix-up with boarding passes. But Janet's expression showed the damage was already done. She'd heard every word, every assumption, every dismissive comment. Joan returned with another flight attendant. Miss Jade, can I get you anything before takeoff? Coffee? Something to read? Another crew member appeared. Ma'am, we have those quarterly reports ready whenever you'd like to review them. A third staff member walked by and nodded respectfully. Good afternoon, Miss Jade. Kate watched this parade of deference with growing alarm. Regional operations directors didn't get this kind of treatment. They didn't have quarterly reports delivered mid-flight. They didn't get personal greetings from captains. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone again. Something wasn't right. The way everyone treated Janet, the way they knew her by name, the way they spoke about board decisions and expansion plans. She typed Janet Jade CEO into the search bar, and what she found took her breath away. Janet Jade, founder, owner, and chief executive officer. The article loaded slowly, but each line was like a punch to her stomach. Built airline from single aircraft over 8 years. Owns 87% of company shares. Youngest airline CEO in industry history. Her phone nearly slipped from her trembling hands. She had just spent the last 30 minutes refusing to give up a seat to the woman who owned the entire airline. Janet noticed her sudden silence and looked up from her book. Their eyes met, and she could see the recognition spreading across her face like a disease. You figured it out, she said quietly. Kate's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Janet closed her book. I don't usually introduce myself as the owner when I fly. I prefer to see how people treat what they assume is just another passenger. It tells me everything I need to know about character. Kate's face had gone completely white. I didn't know. You didn't know. Janet agreed. But here's the question. Should that have mattered? Would you have treated me with basic human respect if you'd known who I was from the start? They both knew the answer. I've been flying on my own planes for 8 years, Janet continued. Watching how passengers treat my employees, how they treat each other, how they treat people they think are beneath them. Kate was frantically scrolling through her phone again, this time searching for her own law firm. Morrison & Associates. Corporate clients. And there it was. A multi-million-dollar retainer with Janet's airline, her law firm's biggest account, the account she personally managed. Morrison & Associates, she whispered. We're your legal counsel. Janet nodded slowly. Kate Mitchell, senior partner. I know exactly who you are. You've been handling our corporate litigation for 3 years. You've billed us over $2 million in legal fees. The irony hit her like a freight train. She'd been sitting in boardroom meetings, charging premium rates to this woman's company, while simultaneously believing she didn't deserve to sit in the same section of an airplane as her. Miss Jade, please. I am so sorry. I had no idea who you were. That's exactly the problem, Janet said calmly. You're only sorry because you found out who I am. 30 minutes ago, when you thought I was nobody important, you had no problem treating me like garbage. Kate realized that everything was falling apart. Her career, her reputation, her future. Every word she'd said had been recorded. Every assumption was about to go viral. And the woman she'd been trying to humiliate owned the company that kept her law firm in business. Please, she whispered. Can we discuss this privately? Janet looked at her with the same calm expression she'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. You made this public when you decided I didn't belong here. I don't see why the resolution should be private." The entire first-class cabin was silent, waiting to see what the owner of the airline would do to the woman who'd tried to steal her seat. Janet looked around at all the recording phones, at the passengers who had witnessed everything, and then she made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'm not going to sue you, Kate, and I'm not going to terminate our contract with Morrison & Associates." Kate's eyes filled with tears of relief. "But," Janet continued, "the airline account will be transferred to a different attorney at your firm. Your involvement with our company ends today." Kate nodded, understanding. She'd keep her job, but she'd just lost the biggest account she'd ever managed. Millions in billing hours, gone. Her partnership track, destroyed. Her reputation in corporate law, permanently damaged. Janet stood and addressed the other passengers. "I hope everyone learned something today about assumptions, about treating people with respect regardless of who you think they are or aren't." She looked directly at Kate. "You're not sorry you treated me badly. You're sorry you got caught treating someone badly who turned out to be important." She turned back to the passengers. "Success doesn't change your worth as a human being, it just reveals other people's character." The businessman in 3A started clapping. Other passengers joined in. Janet raised her hand to stop the applause. "Don't clap for me. Just remember to treat everyone with dignity." If you want to see more stories about justice and standing up for what's right, make sure to subscribe. Captain Larry announced they were ready for takeoff. Kate quietly gathered her belongings and moved to coach, where the gate agent had found her an available seat. As the plane lifted off, Janet reopened her book in her rightful window seat. Through the small window, the city grew smaller as they climbed into the clouds. The passenger across the aisle leaned over. "That was incredible how you handled that." Janet looked up from her page. "My mother taught me that how you treat people when you have power says everything about who you really are." 3 hours later, when they landed, several passengers approached Janet to thank her for the lesson in dignity. Kate was one of the first off the plane, walking quickly through the terminal with her head down. Janet took her time gathering her things. After 8 years of building her airline from nothing, she'd learned that the most important destinations aren't places. They're the moments when you choose who you want to be. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.